Oh my goodness. Hello. Okay, we are officially underway, everybody, for episode, I believe, 4 of Chattable, Hollywood Stories, Insights, and Overshares. So fingers crossed that
I didn't even think about oversharing.
that's the title. You can choose to live up to any of those categories. We at least need a story, or we'll fill gyms. The overshare is completely optional, but we have had some fun ones so far. So hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Brought to you by the team at Actors Comedy Studio. The mystery icon, Erin Coleman, is behind that. She's helping produce our program today, so credit to her. I am Gunnar Rohrbacher. You can also find me on social media at Gunnar the Comedy Coach on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because that's generally what I do. What is Chattable? Pretty much it is in the title, but it's an opportunity to have an informal conversation one-on-one with some notable industry guests and good friends of ours. And we will have a Q&A session at the end. I think I'll probably end up asking Dorian a lot of questions that are on your mind, but we will get to specific ones that we don't cover during the first part of our conversation. So that said, welcome our guest today, casting director Dorian Frankel. Hi.
Hello.
And so much more. I'm gonna actually out you because I thought it was funny. I sent all my guests a questionnaire saying, how would you like to be produced? And Dorian's was like, I'm a casting director. It's fine. It's one of the things that I love about you. There's nothing pretentious about it. There's nothing, did you freeze? Are you there? Oh, there you go.
You froze. I didn't freeze.
I don't know. You froze. It's the Zoom playground. No, you did it. No, you did it. No, you did it.
But we're both moving now, yeah?
Yes, ma'am. So I definitely want to talk to you about casting. And, we've taught together for many years now, and I think our conversations produce helpful information to people in the broader acting community. I want to get to other topics too, but let's start there if we can. I mean, so some of the shows that Dorian's cast have included Veep, Baskets, Parks and Rec, The Kroll Show, Eagle Heart, so many other, Curb Your Enthusiasm. So there you go. That's just a short list. If there's anything you'd like to add, you're more than welcome.
Well, it's too late now, but I just would like to add that Single Parents was really funny. And people which that's the last show I did, and people would come into audition and say, I watched a couple episodes last night because I had this audition and I had no idea this show was good. So that's why it doesn't exist anymore, but it was really funny. Well, proud of that.
Yeah, props to Single Parents. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much content on.
There is.
So I'm gonna start with I think the most fundamental question I'm gonna ask in the most basic way, but it's for a purpose because I have a follow-up to it. What is a casting director's job?
Casting director's job is to, let's see, I mean, it's multifaceted, but you certainly have to be aware of as many actors as you can be, and work with the director in film, showrunner in television, whoever is the creative vision, to find the best actors to fulfill their vision. We write breakdowns, we make sides, we audition people, we make selects out of those auditions, we come up with lists of ideas, we make offers, we check people's schedules constantly. It's mostly schedule checking.
Well, because I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. I was going to say especially TV, but even in film, things move quite rapidly.
In film, I think they move less rapidly for a while, and then you get to the last minute and everybody panics, and then they move.
Yeah, so TV generally does move at a tighter clip.
Yeah, because you've got every week or every 8 days, and new script and new, whatever. There's no time to dilly-dally.
And rewrites and potentially characters added in, which goes directly to you to solve that problem. So then my follow-up question is there anything at all that actors commonly think that is your job that isn't?
Okay, sometimes actors think that we make the choices. That is, for the most part, not true. There are times when we can advocate for somebody, but generally the final choice is not in our hands. Our job is to provide a variety of excellent options so that the director or the showrunner can make a choice. So it's not me who picks who gets hired for the most part. Other things that people think are, well, you know, people think, oh, casting directors, they're gate people. They're just looking for you to fail. I hope people don't mostly think that, but sometimes people think, oh, they just don't like me. They want to hate me. It's like when you walk into the room, we want to like you. We want you to be great. If we don't, or if you're not, I think that's more on you than on me, but you know, it depends. I think there's some casting directors that might be having a bad day. You don't know. But generally, we are advocates and we want actors to do well and we want actors to succeed. So we're not there to judge so much as curate and guide.
Curate, that's such a great word, and I think really helpful for people who you know, maybe don't have a full inside understanding
I mean,
of.
so much to know, and it's impossible to know unless you've been sort of working in this field for a while. You can't just learn it all by, you know, having never done it.
Well, you know, we all know that going through an audition and going through a casting process is the route to an actor getting a job. It's just and one of the reasons I enjoy teaching with you is I just feel like we're very on the same page about demystifying it and, you know, not having it be a mythical process. And I think we both agree that there's not an exact right or exact wrong way to do anything really in show business. But there are guidelines, and you addressed it already. It's just that people forget that casting directors are also, the starting point is a human being.
So I think we all are. If nothing else, that's what we have in common. We are all human beings.
But with that said, are there, you know, so taking right or wrong off the table, are there things that are generally more helpful and maybe less helpful when actors are coming in for auditions?
Absolutely. The first thing I can say is an actor who enjoys auditioning is at a huge advantage. So I know auditioning can be stressful. It can be nerve-wracking. You know, you know exactly what you're doing. You do a great job in your car or at home, and you get into the room, and it's just different. Adrenaline is running. It's just not as easy in the room. But I just completely lost my train of thought. Oh my God.
If you enjoy it, it's more helpful.
You can have a sense of ease and even enjoyment about auditioning. Not only does it make your life easier, it makes our life easier, but I think it's easier to create your best audition together because we're not working to, you know, get rid of nerves or stress or fear of judgment or anything. So I think people that are experienced and have been doing it a while, they come in and it's not like they're acting cool. They're just being themselves, you know, bringing their take on a role. We may work with it, we may play with it a little, and then they go and it's all very pleasant and easy and enjoyable. That's the best kind of audition. The worst things that happen in auditions are when, you know, somebody's gone through like 3/4 of the scene and they stumble over a word and it freaks them out and they want to start again. I think actors who stumble over a word and aren't thrown by it and can just kind of pick up and keep going, I feel more confident in sending them as an option to the producers than somebody who is thrown by it. Other things that sort of work against actors or maybe point them up as being a little inexperienced are sort of overthinking. Like if you feel like you don't deserve to be there, how am I supposed to think that you are capable of showing up on set and being at ease and doing good work? And over apologizing, there's just, you know, putting the casting director at a much higher status doesn't create a good working environment. So things like that, I guess. I'm sure there are more.
Well, I think it's helpful. One of the things underneath the hood in terms of Actors Comedy Studio and what I teach is I feel like a lot of it is empowerment. And even if it's just a simple practice of coming to class to practice auditions to get to the point of confidence that you're talking about, it's the same mindset as an athlete training for, the Olympics or at least major competition. You're not just Right. You're not just training as a gymnast to tumble, right? You're training to tumble under pressure and get a score at the end. And, we don't have to take on the weight of the judgment, but just to make the point, one person will get the job. And several people, I think, will be in the mix. So let me ask you that question. Is there anything that you can identify? And we know the producers are going to choose who they're going to choose for their reasons. And I always tell actors, it's their business why. Anybody who owns a business or they're in the position to hire, they can have their own criteria. It's not just generally talent. Find someone talented, we're all talented. But is there anything that you can identify that actors consistently bring to the party that puts them in the mix, puts them in the conversation?
When someone doesn't feel like they're trying too hard, when somebody does feel like they're trying too hard, it takes them out of the mix often. So when someone feels like I want to just sidebar a little, because one of the things, sometimes people come in and, you hear this thing, make a big choice, make a strong choice, make a choice. And I understand all those things, but what we're hiring in addition to your acting ability is your ability to read material and come up with your idea of how you think it works best. So partially there is, whether your idea of how it works best sort of conflates with the producer's way, like if your vision and their vision make sense and work together. Obviously, if you come in and do something that's completely different, but you're good, we'll redirect and give you a shot to do it in the way that we think works for the scene. But so in addition to acting, it's your understanding of the material. If your comedic sensibility fits the show, fits the scene, that tends to help people be in the mix. Not feeling like it's make or break, like I have to get this one job and it's going to change my life. The understanding that you do this all the time and you get lots of auditions, and some you're going to get and most you're not going to get, and that's okay. Nuance. When we can see what you're thinking, as opposed to you showing us that you're just when somebody is, acting their heart out and it's very external and showy, I think, especially in television, a lot of people are really put off by that. But when there's a lot going on, but it's subtle, it's behind the eyes, we can see what you're thinking, and we can see you sort of moving through the scene and the subtle changes. That's great acting, and I think people do respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, all of that was great. And the thing that stood out to me was that we don't get more than we do in terms of bookings. And I think it's
Everyone.
the reason, but it's for everyone. And the reason, and I'm not trying to dwell on any kind of negative, my last conversation was with Elaine Hendricks, who right now is currently embodying the iconic role of Alexis Carrington Colby on CW's Dynasty. And she literally said the exact same words at the end of our conversation. I still audition. I'm pretty well known, but I still audition and I still don't get more than I do get.
Yeah, that's the nature of it.
It's the nature, and that's really my point, is because if people can accept that is the nature of it and get their arms around it, I think they're more comfortable when they meet people in the industry.
And there are, just to pick up on that, I mean, it's a challenging business, and there are more actors than there are jobs. And I think some people let it break them. They let it break their hearts, which is a hard way to survive. And then people say the business sucks and all these terrible things. But I think all of that is based on a false premise. The false premise that is if you're good, you're going to get work, or if you do a good audition, you're going to get the job. And that is simply not the truth. Because first of all, my job is to send 4, 6, 8 excellent options. Now, all of those people are going to be great and very capable of doing the job, but the math is only one person gets the job. So it's not because there's anything wrong with the other people. Maybe one person just feels more like the character. Maybe, one person looks less like another character on the show. Who knows? It's a million things. But I think if people can disabuse themselves of the notion that if they do a good audition, they should get the job, and if they don't, it's not fair. Because that will just kill you. It will just crush your spirit. And then you can't go on like that.
I would completely agree. Some of the most fun I've had acting were in auditions because the casting director dug it. It's like you either get hired or you don't. I like when things happen that are spontaneous. Well, we're both improvisers. We'll talk about that later. But I love it when people are like, that was good, but maybe you're more like this other guy. Can you go out in the hall with this and come back in? I'm like, I live for that. Yeah.
I agree. But also the ability, and I mostly work in comedy. I assume there's a similar thing in drama, although not exactly the same, is that the easier it is for you to sort of go with the flow, take direction, new pages come at you, new lines come at you, the more you can roll with that without it being a problem, the better also you will do, and the more people will want to work with you because they don't have to handhold, and you're a team player, and you're there to show up.
Team player is important, and one of the things that I say to actors all the time, even if we're just in a class and they're on the mark and they're working on a part, whatever it is, and it's how I've evolved as a teacher, but I always say, well, how does this attach to the whole? Because, sometimes I see a really good performance and the character is right and the story is right, but there's still a sense of they're acting the scene like it's the beginning and the end of the whole thing. And it's a pretty nuanced detail, but you seem to be nodding. I think you know what I'm getting at, but you can tell the difference when somebody's attached that scene to a bigger piece. Am I right about that or wrong about that?
No, it depends on the material, but I think generally you do want to understand that you're telling a broader story than especially, if you're auditioning for a co-star, if you're a bank teller, the scene is not probably about the bank teller. And actors that come in and make it about the bank teller are putting themselves at a disadvantage.
Right, because they're not seeing the bigger picture and where the person fits in. And one of the things that you always say that I love and totally agree with and appreciate is the writer wrote it for a reason. So if because they have to pay for it, they have to bring in another person. It's not a problem. It's the process, but it's there for a reason. I think part of an actor's job to book or have a chance at booking responsibly is to really understand the reason. And so many actors, because of nerves or maybe inexperience, think it's their job, especially when it comes to comedy, to prove that they're funny, like prove that to you, or upend expectations by doing something no one else showed you that day. Those things seem to resonate. Can you?
And it's funny because I have heard people say they love when somebody comes in and does something different, but so first of all, every casting director is a different human being and everyone has a different opinion. In my personal experience, often when someone's doing something different to be different, to stand out, they're not really serving the scene. Their priority is standing out. Their priority is not telling the story. So I think it's better to have your priority be to tell the story and to understand how your character fits into that story. And if there's an opportunity to show that you have that sort of subtle sense of humor with that, or you understand the timing, or you understand how to set somebody up or respond to something that you're getting from, the series regular or whatever, that's ideal.
Is there any reality that that casting directors get cast, so to speak? Meaning, obviously you're going to speak for yourself primarily, but I see that casting directors who tend to work in comedy tend to stay in comedy, for example. Like people don't flip-flop from a multicam to an intense drama.
Yeah, there's some of that. I mean, I've done both. I prefer comedy and I tend to get hired more for comedy. But I was just talking to somebody who's doing a comedy pilot who had only done drama before. And she was saying, I didn't know a lot of the actors. And these are all people that I knew, but somehow she got that job and, she ended up with a great cast. She just had to educate herself. So I think we know how to do the job, but certainly having a greater understanding of that particular talent pool is useful. The last drama we worked on, honestly, I struggled because a lot of the submissions, in drama, it seemed like they wanted a lot of young, attractive people, and they all just kind of seemed the same to me because I'm used to comedy people who are all just so wonderfully unique and different, or, they're not all the same. So that was the struggle for me. And obviously they're all different people, but I just kept seeing the same look. So it was harder for me to distinguish. But yes, I think because your knowledge grows and your experience grows, it makes sense that you're going to get hired to do that same kind of thing.
Fair. What was my follow-up to that? So how does a casting director get paired with the show? What's that process?
Well, for episodic television, network or streamer or whatever, sometimes a showrunner will have a relationship with the casting director, and there are people that use the same people all the time. So there's that. If that's not the case, the studio and or the network, but most of the studio will set up meetings with a few people. So usually we meet on a pilot or a show, and they'll probably meet a few people and they'll just decide who they want to hire based on the meeting. And I guess the resume and whatever.
So
job interview,
like a job interview. I mean, I knew the answer, but I like to, we're always advocating for, what the students want to know. One of the things that I'd like to do is just normalize this business, because a lot of it is, completely comparable to other vocations. You act professional, not act, you grow into a professional that people want to work with. You build credits going up the ladder. Whether you're an actor in casting, it's the same. And you show up for duty on time with generally a professional demeanor and get the jobs that suit your nature best.
Yeah, I think there's a thing that when people are early in their careers or they want to be actors, there's this notion that they can jump from the beginning to someplace big. My hands are out of the frame, see, but let's say this is a bigger distance like that. But the truth is, you start where you are and you build. You usually do not go from here to here. For the most part, that is very unusual. And I think people have to be understanding of that and patient with the process, because you're not going to be a movie star tomorrow, probably.
Yeah, it just doesn't work that way, because even if you have the capability, and even as a young person, even if you genetically and emotionally have it in you to carry a feature film, it's still hard to become the choice if no one's even met you one time before.
That you have to continue to prove yourself.
And build relationships. And I think the reality of networking for actors has a lot more to do with getting into the room and consistently offering good, solid performances that honor the material that was given than some kind of schmoozing aspect. Would you agree?
Yes. First of all, yeah, any one audition, if you don't get that job, it is still really valuable. If you've gone in and done a great audition, people will remember. And if you consistently audition well, people will remember. So you're building that. You're not just trying to get this one job. And what was the thing you just said? I don't know.
I also forget things as soon as I say them. Well, it's not schmoozy, because actors, I feel like they live in a void a lot of time, because we don't even really hear no when it's a no. We just hear nothing. And I think that creates a sensation of what is even happening? Almost you'd rather get an official phone call saying we went with someone else.
Usually isn't a why you didn't get it. So two things, schmoozing. Anybody who comes in trying to schmooze is really transparent, and it's a little icky and it's uncomfortable and nobody likes it, and don't do it. people say they want to build relationships with cast characters. They want to build rapport. So we can tell immediately when somebody's coming in and trying to make an impression. Sometimes kids will be trained to say, "You look very beautiful today." And it's like, that's not coming from their head. Somebody told them to do that. Somebody told them to shake my hand. Somebody told them to, thank me for the opportunity. And it's not spontaneous. It's not natural. It's not authentic. The way you build relationships is by just being around people again and again and again. There are a lot of actors that I'm friendly with because they come in, they audition, and we chat a little, but they didn't come in trying to build a relationship. They came in to do their best audition and they went on with their day. Yeah.
Right, there's just a little human rapport, and then that's it. But I will ask directly, because I know people are thinking it. How do I stay in touch with you as an actor?
Okay, I'm going to be 100% honest about this. I don't love postcards. I don't love email newsletters. I get a lot of those. The truth is, when I'm working on a show and things are moving really quickly, I don't necessarily have time to look at my mail. So by the time I look at a postcard that's intended for a specific role, that role's probably done. I also move to different offices for different shows, so there's no consistent address. I cannot think of a time when somebody got an audition or a job by sending an email or a postcard. I know people just want to sort of keep in our consciousness, and that's fine, but I will say that, my eyeballs are on submissions. So the best thing to do is to make sure you have somebody submitting you quickly and appropriately. And as I see you coming through those submissions again and again and again, that's what I'll remember. That's what will remind me, because that's when I'm trying to set up a session. I'm looking at submissions. I'm not looking at my postcards. I'm not looking at my email. I will look at email because sometimes agents will suggest people or pitch people, but honestly, I'm not there to serve the agent. I'm not there to serve the actor. I'm there to serve the show, and I'm trying to find the best people. And if I get 2,000 submissions for a role, probably there are enough good choices within those 2,000. That's the way. Have somebody submitting you.
You just hinted at my next follow-up to that. That was great. And I hope everybody's just writing down meticulous notes. So a lot of actors still have misconceptions about a couple of things. The difference between an agent and a manager. And so just to cover a common one, not the only one, but they'll still think that a manager is more personally involved in your life and helps develop you more and spends more personal time with you. That could be true in the world. I don't find it in practice being typical. But anyway, this is really the question. They'll think once they get representation, the significant change is that the agent or manager will pitch them, go to bat for them, and start making things happen. What say you to that?
Yeah, I think that is a little bit old school, a little bit based on movies. It's like, kid, you're going to be a star. I'll make it happen. Yes, once you get representation, I remember when I started as an actor, and when I was in my early mid-20s, I got into the union, into SAG, and I remember thinking, oh great, now everything's going to be easy. Now I'm in the union. And I think people think that now I'm an agent, now everything's going to be easy. Everything is never easy. You're always having to, do your own work, continue to improve your craft, be aware of what's going on, study, make things. An agent should be submitting you. That's the key. They should pitch you sparingly when there's a particular role that they absolutely know you're absolutely right for. Sometimes agents will pitch their entire roster and submit their entire roster. That is not particularly useful to me. But I hear actors talk about how their agents suck all the time. And I know on some occasions that those agents are submitting them, they're pitching them, they're doing everything they can do. We might not be calling them in just because they're not as right for these roles. It's just, there are a lot of actors and we can only call in so many. And sometimes, I feel badly calling in too many actors, because then everybody in the olden days was driving over to the Fox lot and shuttling to the lot and then walking. It's a lot. And when you have a 1 in 40 chance of getting a job versus a 1 in 12 chance of getting a job. It's like, it's sort of disrespectful to actors to see too many actors. Part of it is curating it before we set up the session so that we're curating. And I will say, I always see some people I don't know because that's the best way I think to meet people. And I always see some people that I know are right and will do a good job. Did I answer your question?
I think so. It's okay if they have follow-ups. They can ask when we get there. So you talked about I forget exactly what you said, but the old days or the old times. I feel like that was like from the 1950s up until 6 months ago. Now we're living in this time.
Yeah.
So I feel I would be bereft if I didn't ask you about the shift in casting in the last 6 months. Obviously, Zoom wasn't necessarily on everybody's radar. We'd heard of Skype. I'll own, I personally had not even heard of Zoom until this time. And then can you just talk about how it's affecting casting and how you expect it to affect casting moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it used to be that there were always in-person callbacks. And then that over the last 5 to 10 years sort of faded away because writers were in rooms and they didn't necessarily have time to come to auditions. And they learned that if we have taped auditions and let's say we say 15 people and we send them 6 choices, they can just watch those 6 choices and pick somebody. This is for, ongoing episodic co-stars, guest stars, not series regulars. So that sort of eliminated the callback for most episodic television. So that was a shift. And now I think people would have thought, oh, we can't do it without being in person because we can't feel the chemistry. And I think what people are finding is it works. It works fine. So I suspect there'll be more of that and less going back to the other, who likes to commute? Who likes sitting in traffic? It's nice to be in a room with people. I will enjoy going back to that someday for some reason. But there's Zoom, there are other platforms, Breakdown Services has their own now. We Audition, I know, seems to work well. There are a few others, I think. There are multiple platforms that casting directors can use to hold live auditions, callbacks, chemistry reads, rehearsals. It works well. So I think we're very fortunate that this happened at the time when we have the technology, but we do have the technology. And I think for the most part, I am sensing that people are thinking, yeah, this is fine. Yeah.
If for everyone's edification, if an actor were to get an invitation to audition and it was a self-tape versus a time for a live, because we know right now for sure in Los Angeles in particular, people aren't going into rooms. I mean, we don't have to be psychic to say that it'll probably stay that way for a while. Yeah.
I hope they're not going into rooms anywhere, but I guess they are. But don't get me started.
I do want to get you started because it's chattable and I want to chat. But anyway, but this was my question, and then elaborate in any way you want on what it is to cast in this time, because I know people are dying to know. So if I'm an actor and I got either a self-tape request, a self-submission request, or an appointment to appear live on Zoom, is that the casting director's decision on how to do it? Is it the producers? Is it a collaboration?
I think it's, look, everybody is still figuring it out, and it depends on the project. I think generally producers are relying somewhat on casting directors to let them know what their options are, let them know what works. I would think for the most part, a first round will be self-tapes, unless you're doing sort of a callbacky situation where you know all the people and you're just doing a quick producer session. But are we mostly talking about television, or are we talking about everything?
I just always think in television because I like it more than movies, so it's a bias that I forget I have. I forget about movies a lot until I see a really good one, but I only really see like 1 or 2 really good ones a year.
It used to be. Is it them or is it us? I don't know.
It's them. It's for sure them. I mean, the market for Hollywood is now China. Don't get me started. Now I threw down with a don't get me started.
No. So I think generally casting directors are asking for a round of self-tapes in order to curate, again, to narrow down some good choices, and then they send those tapes to the producers. And then if they want to see more, then they can do something live. My sense is the sort of in real time thing is happening more for pilots and for features. You know, if you're just doing episodic, I don't know that you need to go beyond the self-tape. I mean, we were casting from, you know, in the olden days, you know, if we'd set up a session and somebody was working or they're out of town and they couldn't make it to the session, we would accept a self-tape, and we would just, if that was good, we would put it in the mix with the choices that we're sending, and they would either pick that person or they'd pick somebody else. But you certainly could get hired from a self-tape. So I don't know why you would have to be in person now if a self-tape is sufficient to get the job, the particular job. And pilots.
If I was a cynical actor and I said something like, you addressed one of it, but I'm going to add to the list. My agent or manager doesn't do anything for me. Or, you know, if they do, well, like I know casting directors get a lot of submissions. They probably don't even look at them all anyway, etc. Anything on that list. You've met them too. There are people in that column. What would you say to them about, you know, that a glib take on show business where the people who succeed just seem to be getting some kind of break that's not available to other people?
Yeah, I think it's generally not accurate. It's hard to understand why other people are getting work and you're not. But I would say for the most part, it's probably about the quality of a person's work. I mean, I've seen people that have been at this a long time come in, and here's the thing. Most auditions I get to witness are pretty good. You know, it's rare that people are terrible, and it's rare that people blow me away. And you always hear about actors like, I blew them away, they love me, I killed it. Mostly it's a pretty good audition, or it's a really good audition, or it's off. So we tend to like look for those really good ones as opposed to the pretty good ones. So it's not like there's this vast divide. Some people just aren't quite there yet. And I do sometimes feel like people are putting so much of their resources, so much time and energy and money into marketing and promoting and networking and pictures and websites and all this stuff in order to get in the room. But then when they get in the room, they're not at a level that allows them to compete. So I think skill is number one. Your craft, your ability, your ability to act, your ability to audition. Getting in the room, if you're not there with that, it's sort of all not. It's just a waste of resources.
Right. Get great and get confident, and then show off. What is the most outrageous thing an actor has ever done live in a room?
Okay, I had this little office once, and it was for, I think, was it for Marin? It's for a role, just like a guest star in Marin. And the guy was, you know, he got upset at something, and everybody came in and auditioned. They yelled at the person when they needed to yell at the person. And this one guy, fine actor, there was a chair there, and he picked up the chair and he smashed it down, and it broke into a million pieces. And it's like, what makes you think the chair is there to be broken? I mean, the chair was there for him to use, but it was not there for him to smash. And clearly, you know, he was caught up in the moment, but it was a little like, okay, can I trust you? You know, can I trust you to, you know, just not lose sight of what's appropriate?
So this was not a prop breakaway chair.
The chair that I used to use, and then I had to go get another chair. He felt bad, but it was like, yikes. Yeah. Audition, an actor came in and got halfway through the scene, and this is a producer session. And halfway through, he just stopped and he said, "I'm sorry, I just can't." And he sort of dropped the sides on the coffee table and walked away. It wasn't a terrible role. It was a good show. I was like, oh, I don't know what he hated about it so much, but he did not like being there. So he left.
That's actually a great story. I know many casting directors, and I've heard like the chair breaking, pulling out a gun. Like I've heard all these outrageous things, but I like the drama of
Yeah. He didn't toss him down. He was just like, I'm so sorry. I just can't. Okay.
That is great.
He works. It's, I've seen him in things. He's fine, but
Let's see. All right. So when we get to the Q&A, if people have more casting director oriented questions, we built in time for them to ask. But you are so much more than that. I wanted to ask you about a couple of other things. Number one, if you didn't know this, Dorian cut an album, y'all. She cut an album. Which, by the way, if I've never told you this, and honestly, I might not have listened to it last time, like we saw each other in person, but I've listened to it many times and I've kind of fallen in love with it. I am a particular fan of Vampire. I love that song. Your album is called One More Song. Can you tell us about that and what it was like to not just write and record songs, but you actually decided to make an album?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't play an instrument particularly well, but I've always felt musical, and I've always just had songs running through my head, whether they're real songs or other songs. And when I was younger and I was doing improv, I did a lot of song improv, and I took to that and I really enjoyed it. And I would find that when I wasn't doing anything musical, I missed it. And I think when I was like in high school and college, I wrote a bunch of songs, but I didn't know what to do with them. They just lived in my head, so I just kind of stopped. And then there was a time when I was working and I hadn't been doing anything musical, and I just thought, well, if I can do song improv, maybe I should just write songs and write them down. And so I just started again, and I really enjoyed it. And then I thought, well, okay, I'm not going to just let them live in my head now. I went to a couple places to, there are people you can go to and you can record your song. I did a couple of those. They were good. They were fine. They didn't feel right. And then I was at a barbecue, and I was talking to this couple, and I said, do you know somebody who I can go to record some songs? And they recommended somebody. And I went there and we did one song, and it just felt right. It was like, oh, well, I have more. Let me do some more. And I just found that I loved recording them as much as I loved writing them. So we just kind of kept going. And then I had like 24, and I thought, well, all right, I guess I'll just put them out in the world. I don't know.
Fantastic. So you can hear Dorian's music on your website is dorianfrankel.com, correct?
Yeah, but it's Spotify or wherever.
But Spotify, she's on Spotify. I believe it's on, you can get it through Amazon too. Can you not?
I think it should be in all the places,
All the places. So great. Give it a listen. How would you describe your style or genre of music, or would you?
I struggle with that. There are so many sub-genres of things. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's a little bit old school, sort of maybe folk pop kind of singer-songwriter stuff.
Well, I definitely, as a listener, if it helps, I think folk is definitely at least part of the description. It's a beautiful voice against strings primarily. And American folk music is actually my favorite kind of music. That's why I genuinely take to your album. There's a little bit of Iris DeMent in there. If you want to take that. Say what?
I would take that as a great compliment.
You should, because she's one of my all-time faves. Well, because your songs have great storytelling, and they're also funny. You're not afraid to crack a joke in a song, and I like that.
There's a hint of humor, yes, in some songs, yeah. So I'm working on another one. I actually recorded 13 more songs, and then pandemic hit, and so they sit half done, but they'll get done.
Yeah, because I also love to write music, and I'm blessed to have a writing partner who's trained, because Gunnar's not. But I do write lyrics that I think I'm pretty decent at, and I can come up with the tune and the melody. I just can't transcribe it. So we also collaborate to make music, and it's really just it's a joyous thing.
Really is. I've been focusing on some other things during the last, part of me was like, I've got all this time. I should be writing more songs, but there are other things that were calling me. But I've come to think of it as something I do for a while, and then I'll do something else. But I'll always come back to it because it's the best.
So that's part of the way you've been spending your time over the last 6 months. Is there anything else that you've been up to while we've been kind of?
I mean, I've made the same chocolate chip cookie recipe 7 or 8 times because they're so good. I've been doing a lot of cooking because I never had time to cook, and I like it. Cooking and baking. I have, done the organizing of the house, although there's still a lot that hasn't been done, and I'm now sick of it. I had some short film scripts that I'd written, so I've kind of brushed them up. I had an idea for a pilot, so I wrote that. And I've been doing a YouTube cooking show in my house with my boyfriend and his ex-wife. I've been directing and editing. They host it, she cooks. So I had to learn to edit to the extent that I've learned it, and I'm shooting that. That's been fun. And then I'm working on a podcast.
Well, let's talk about that. But first I have to say that whole sentence about a cooking show out of your own kitchen with your boyfriend and his ex-wife is like the most evolved, a wonderful statement.
It's called Culinary Quickies, and it's on YouTube, and we have 16 episodes up. I don't know. I'm sure there's other stuff I've been doing too. Because the days just go by, and I'm not sitting around. I am watching a good amount of TV, but I'm like.
Well, I mean, I know it's part of the reason I came up with this. Not that it's anything genius, but I was like, I can catch up with people I like. And also, help my audience out, help my students out, and give them information that I know that they wonder about. So hence Chattable was born. There is great opportunity in all of this mayhem that is in the world.
I think we're all learning things we didn't know we needed to learn or want to learn, but there are lessons.
There are lessons. This is a little bit random, but I wanted funny when I was like putting together my questions for Dorian. I'm like, I need a couple of weird ones just to see what she says. Look, so she's all into it.
Now until I hear them, but we'll see.
No, I think you'll have fun with it. I think. What would your TED Talk be, and what would what's it called?
I feel like if I were ever, I think I would like to do a TED Talk about. I think it would be called "Old People Who Can Still Do Things." This notion, it's like you always hear, like even in casting, it's like, we want an old woman of 50. It's like, I cannot get you an old woman of 50 because a 50-year-old woman does not feel like an old person in this day and age. And I understand that people younger than that, their perspective is different than mine, obviously. But there are.
They think she looks like Betty White, who is like legit 100. And they're still like, that's what a 50-year-old looks like.
50, I'm sorry. But there are people doing all kinds of remarkable things with their lives at all kinds of ages. And I remember there was the drumming granny, and people were like, oh my God, she can drum, she's old. It's like, it should be clear to us all by now that old people can still do things. And I have literally, I have a little list in my list app of old people who can still do things. And people are going like, oh my God, she's 70 and she's still active. It's like, God, I hope I'm still active at 70. I mean, it shouldn't be surprising anymore. Old people can still do things. Well, and that's like, I'm going to be old sooner than a lot of people, and I want to still be doing things. So
it's funny, and this is totally true. My next, just like rando question was, do you consider yourself to be an old soul? That was my next question.
Maybe. I feel like old soul is something you put on another person. I don't know if you can self-define as an old soul, but I am fortunate in that I tend to be fairly adaptable. I don't freak out over a lot of stuff. And so maybe that has a little bit of old soulness to it. I don't know. I've been here, just the amount of time I've been here. But I part of this whole pandemic thing is I've sometimes been perplexed at why people are struggling with certain aspects of it that to me just seem like an easy shift. But I also understand that I'm just fortunate to be able to make those shifts, and not everybody is. I don't know.
No, I relate to that statement. You and I are both improvisers. Do you think you were drawn to improv because that was your personality anyway, or did training and spending time as an improviser, did that influence your approach to life at all?
Yes and no. I mean, I was a shy kid. I was never sort of a class clown at all, but I always was attracted to funniness, and I can be goofy. I'm not aggressively funny, but I'm funny-ish, I guess. I think I was attracted to improv because it's play, and I love, surprise and spontaneity, and it's fun. I did sort of get into, I started investigating acting in general, and maybe improv in particular, because I wanted to be less self-conscious. I don't know.
That was a specific edict in your head when you approached?
It would be useful. And I remember taking a class and getting up on stage and failing and not dying. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's all right. I can do that. It's not going to kill me. So that was handy. So,
Yeah, I do know. I saw improv for the first time when I was like 19, and I just was like so drawn to it. I had to do that. A byproduct was that I was also a shy kid, and it really helps you bring you into yourself. People would say out of yourself or out of something. I just think it brings you into your being holistically.
I agree.
But mostly I was in it for storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while to figure out, because I do like to act. I like to write. I like to improvise. But upon deep introspection, trying to get to the root of what drives it all, I like stories.
Stuff is in service of storytelling. And I think just as humans, whether people think of themselves as somebody who likes stories or not, we live through story, and I don't know anybody who doesn't get caught up in something that makes them think, what's going to happen? I mean, that's what keeps us going. Otherwise, why get up in the morning?
I mean, we're all playing a part in this global story right now. I mean, we are. Where do you turn for inspiration?
Inspiration as far as anything?
As anything, what inspires you?
Oh, nothing. Oh, I don't know. What inspires me?
This is where she gets all dark and existential.
I think humility and the drive to create combined with humility, I find inspiring.
Wow, that's a great answer. Okay, I don't have any more direct questions. Is there anything that is on your mind at all that you'd like to tell the people?
I hadn't planned this, but it occurs to me while we're sitting here. I made this deck of cards for my podcast, but I thought it might be fun to play with you a little bit. I don't know if you can.
Whatever this is, I want it to happen.
Or is it? It's backwards, right?
Ask, yeah.
It's a mirror thing on the. I know there's like a mirror thing where you can turn.
It looks the right way on my screen.
It does look the right. Okay, it looks backwards on my screen. So these I call these Scuttlebutt cards. and they just have things written on them that are things that I've heard actors say, things that I know some people think that may or may not be true. Not everybody believes them. I'm going to play, like if we were in person, I would have you pick 3. But you can just point and I'll pick them for you. And I would just love to get your take on whatever these little bits of scuttlebutt are, whether they're true, whether you agree, whether you have an experience. Because I want to see how this works.
Audience, the tables have turned and I'm thrilled.
You do this? You
Uh,
point to 1.
okay, wait, how does that work?
10. Okay, that one. Now it's a good one. That's a great one. All right, let's do another one.
Just the second from your left hand.
Second one from my left hand. Okay.
Second one.
Because I'm now having to do this all online. Okay, and one last one.
There.
Okay.
Where it is.
All right. Now, before I drop these all over, so I will show these to you. Now, tell me if you can read this.
Yeah, it says, take your glasses off during the scene to show both looks.
What are your thoughts on that?
See. It's so, I'm laughing because I'm going to, it's not steal from you. It's just that I've always agreed with you because we teach together and this is a question that's come up. I hope nobody ever gets hired because they're an actor with glasses. Here's what I'll say. This is my take because I don't audition commercially anymore because I just don't want to, but I did a ton and I booked a lot of commercials when I was young. And there was an older school thing of, it was just kind of pretty much a given for commercials just to be like, hi, I'm Gunnar Rohrbacher, but you would just, that was like all standard and, and that's commercials, that's viable. At this point in my life, I just have glasses with anti-reflective lenses. I wouldn't wear them as a prop. That's not my jam. I don't want that to be a part of character development. I really need and wear glasses. I can switch to contacts. I don't like them. And I've got glasses that I think are good for my face and fit my face. So my holistic answer to that question is wear them if you really wear them, and then do everything that you can to set yourself up for success and don't create obstacles to complain about, because I see people who do. Like, I need my readers, or these aren't, and they want to comment that they aren't the right glasses. And I always think, just take care of yourself.
That is a fair point, because you know in advance whether or not you can read the thing or not. And I know sometimes people print things out really large if they need that. So that's great. The reason that I thought of this is usually you can tell when somebody has taken their glasses off or put their glasses on in a scene that it is a planned moment because they want us to see what they look like with and without. And it never feels spontaneous to me. It always feels planned. And sometimes people like the glasses go off, the glasses will go back on. And it just, for me, it takes me out of the natural flow of the scene, because I would say 95% of the time it feels like, oh, they planned that so that I could see what they look like with glasses and without glasses.
See, my genuine response to that is I only applied it to like up front or the Slate or actors checking in with casting, because I would literally never do what you just said. It's like literally not even on my radar that I would take it off as an acting move.
It happens. Like, listen to me, Lydia. I don't know how to tell you this, but I have to. It's like, it just doesn't feel authentic generally. All right, next.
What are they looking for? Well, here's my response to that. They're looking for someone who in all ways represents themselves as a professional peer, who is bringing themselves to the party in terms of the audition and potentially booking the part. It to me, it's like a marriage. What I would be looking for if I was a producer would be a solid, confident actor who is telling their own personal life story, married with the character that is in the script and the story that's in the script, and those two things are seamless. That's my answer.
I think that is very much what people are looking for as far as an actor. And just to take another angle on that. Sometimes actors will come in to an audition and say, so what are they looking for here? And there is an assumption that I've had this long, in-depth conversation with the showrunner about, for this role, I want a guy who's, he's got a little bit of a Tony Soprano thing. And for the most part, I'm not having those conversations. For the most part, I get the script, I write a breakdown, I decide, who feels right to me. It's not about like somebody telling me they're looking for a very specific thing. I also like to bring in a variety of actors, not all just kind of the same thing, so that they can have some options to choose from. So this notion that they're looking for, like, I got to fit this thing that they're looking for, to me feels like it can misguide people. I want to see each actor's best version of what they think works in the scene. So rather than them trying to be what they think somebody's looking for.
Yeah, they're paying for your interpretive abilities.
All right, last one. Oh, okay, this is also in quotes.
Do nothing. Oh God, I'm gonna be really honest. I just had a real emotional response to that.
What was it?
Anger. I needed to do that. Here's why. Because, I have a deep spiritual connection to my job. It matters to me a lot. So it took me a second to process, but I can tell you why it pissed me off. Because I think anybody who would teach that to an actor is misleading them. And that makes me mad. And if that's given as a note to an actor, and it is, that also makes me mad, because I think it's a BS note. It's fair to say do less or give something a little bit more specific, but do nothing. We don't work this hard. I'm going to make a speech because that card got me all. We don't train this hard, work this hard, and in doing so, we're choosing not to do other things that can provide maybe more security and more stability and more regularity. It's all a trade-off, and that's all personal. But all of that doesn't happen so that we can do nothing. And we might need an adjustment. We might need to tone something down. But even that is specific, and I can understand it. But I also don't have fun doing nothing. That doesn't inspire me. It doesn't light me up. It doesn't excite me. And I find it dismissive. That's why I pushed a little button in me. And it may be inadvertent, because I'll always assign better attentions to people. All in there.
Yeah, I think that's all valid. I feel similarly. And sometimes, if we're in an audition and an actor does a scene and we want to redirect, and they're like, oh, I know, throw it away, do nothing. And I never give those particular pieces of direction. And I know some people do, some people, very smart, successful people do. But I think it's not doing nothing. I think it's making it more subtle. I would say the most common redirection is, actors in comedy often come in a little broad. So we're trying to make it a little more subtle, make it a little more underplayed. But in, specific ways, it's just, doing nothing, I feel is not a specific enough piece of direction for me, but some people like it. So thank you for that. Scuttlebutt Cards. I don't know. You think that'll work in a podcast?
Oh my gosh, I love that. I do. I love it. And if I was any kind of real-time example, look, you got me all.
I know. I'm very excited about that.
Hot under the collar. So when is your podcast happening? What's it called? What can we expect?
Okay, so I just started recording last week after doing a lot of sort of pre-production and research, and honestly, it's something I've been thinking about for over a year, and I was ready to go out and start going to people's places and recording them in person, and then you know what happened. But I have a great online platform. I'm looking to launch probably mid to late October, because I want to get a bunch of episodes done and in the can. It's called Ask a Casting Director. It will be available in all the places that there are podcasts. It's Casting Director on Casting Director. And I'm just talking to people about being a casting director and also what it's like to work in this current climate. And then if I don't find that I hate podcasting, I have a whole family of podcasts that will sort of take off from that, but we'll see if I have time.
Fantastic. Okay, very much looking forward to that. And I think very necessary. So I think you're going to find a big audience very quickly.
I hope. I mean, I know a lot of people are interviewing a lot of entertainment people, but I thought this was a specific take on it. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to get to questions in a second, but before I do that, I have a little. It's not a game. It's just I like it to feel game showy. Because right, it's show business. So it's just a quick round of speed questions, right? So none of them are, they're fairly straightforward in their way, but it's more about stimulus response, right? So I'm just going to shoot them out there. Say the first thing that comes into your head. Are you all set?
Sure.
Okay. What does comedy mean to you?
Comedy brings joy and distraction from grief.
If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
It would be arrogance.
More or less?
Less arrogance.
I don't usually have follow-ups, but you set me up. I couldn't resist. Do you think of yourself as successful?
Sure.
What's a funny word?
Scuttlebutt.
Do you have more?
Cornucopia.
Both good. What's more important, self-expression or true respect from your peers?
Self-expression.
Is there anyone not invited to your funeral?
No. I don't ever want to have somebody that I'm afraid to run into on the street.
It's good philosophy. Last question. Is there anything, in your opinion, every human being on the planet has a responsibility to do?
You treat others with respect.
Great answers. See, that was harmless. And I love your funny words.
More arrogance.
Well, you just said one word and I was like, what if there was more? What if it was worse?
That would be an interesting world to live in.
Like, let's dial it up to 1,000, everybody. Egos cannot be big enough.
That was my idea, and I will take credit for it.
And I did it by myself. This all happened alone. That always amazes me. Okay, so I might not get to everybody's questions, but we will definitely get to some. So, I mean, I feel like you addressed it, but just the distinction between in-office auditions. The question is, do you prefer in-office or on Zoom right now? But I believe you're not going to be in any rooms soon, are you?
No, I'm going to be working on a feature, but I don't know that. I think it'll be offers and self-tapes. I don't know how much actual auditioning there will be. But I think just to speak to the difference between in room or in person or in person on the computer, I think it's just a little bit of adjustment to the technology, but really the rules and the requirements and the desires are the same. How
do you get to know people that you've never met? Do you have any kind of percentage when you're putting together a list of a space or two for new faces? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much I reserve these spaces but when I'm going through breakdowns, when I'm going through submissions, I always want to bring in some people that I know are great and are going to give me a great audition so that I have that. And I always look for people who look interesting that I may not know, because that really is the best way. Generals I don't love. You can have a great time with somebody and they may not be a great auditioner, who knows? So I prefer to have somebody in for a role. So I almost always, unless there isn't somebody, but there's always somebody. But I always like to, anybody that looks interesting we'll bring in.
Awesome. What do you think of a button or a tag or some ad lib during a comedy audition?
If it feels spontaneous and authentic, I have no problem with it. If it goes on for too long or feels written, it will lose you a job. Often I feel like, and you've heard me say this, I know that actors are doing these things to show what they have to contribute, but it can come off to producers and the writers as, I can write better than you. And there's some arrogance.
So think it through and be judicious. That goes to, I mean, I never mentioned it, and it's a blip on my radar, but I was in casting for a little bit, part of my past, and it really influenced the teacher that I am, because I feel like part of my passion really got, because I used to teach improv, but it really got ignited when I was like, oh my God, these people are smart and they are talented, but sometimes the auditions aren't flying because of all these mythical notions, one of them being, just because the project is labeled a comedy, I'd better prove I'm funny somehow.
There's an effortfulness to that sometimes that makes everybody uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable. Let me look at this next question. I'm just going to read it because it's a little bit long. If an actor booked one of your shows through local casting in a regional market, have gotten more comedy training and booked more credits since moving to LA, how can we get reintroduced other than breakdowns? Did you follow that entirely?
Done a particular show, probably not going to be on that show again. That's pretty rare these days. And I, if somebody casts somebody on location, I don't get involved generally, and I don't pay that much attention, honestly. So I don't think this sounds like somebody's personal story. I don't think that having booked a show that I worked on in another place really matters that much. And the way to get to know me other than breakdown is on breakdown.
This is an interesting question, because show business does have, I think it's infinitely fascinating, but there is a shallowness and a vapid aspect to it. And I think this question is aimed toward that. For the women in the industry, is there a beauty standard, whether directors are aware of it or not? And then what do you think, is there pressure on women, I think is what is the heart of this question, to stay what we think of as traditionally beautiful with Botox, fillers, surgeries, etc.?
Depends on the role, depends on the show. I think maybe there's a little more of that pressure in drama. In comedy, there's more leeway. I think there's a lot more leeway and openness than there used to be across the board. And I just think doing that to yourself, feeling like you have to be something other than what you are, is going to cause a sort of an eating away at you self-loathing that will impact your acting in a negative way. I think there are roles for all types of people. And if you have easy access to that gorgeous person, then those are the roles you're going to be right for. If that's who you are, or you can become that with ease, those are the roles you're right for. If that's not who you are, don't try to be that, because it will never feel true. And I will say, sometimes a role we put out in a breakdown that we need somebody who is drop dead gorgeous. And almost always, in my experience, that's because of a story point, in the way that somebody reacts to them, or in a job that they have, or something like that. So when people have these gorgeous pictures, and I need an actor that makes such a strong, gorgeous impression, or whatever look, and an actor comes in not as attractive as their picture, I wasted their time, I wasted my time, because they're not right for that role, because they're not telling that story.
Awesome. I agree with all of it so much. I think you've covered this a little bit, but just to review self-tape, it's such a big part of actors' lives right now. And I get where it's coming from. What has worked, or what would you like to see actors include that give you a sense of rapport? So beyond a good audition and a performance that addresses the sides, is there anything? Is there something to saying your name in a slate?
I think people stop worrying about creating rapport. If you're worried about creating your rapport, you're not putting enough, don't put attention on that to the detriment of putting your attention on doing the scene well. Don't worry about the rapport. Just show up and do your best work, and the rapport will come. I just don't think it's something to be worked at.
Yeah, it's, it is what it is. I always tell people, when I counsel them or we just talk about this, it's consider the transaction. You're job interviewing a lot. And you might be interviewing for jobs with some of the same people. Maybe that's a little bit different than other businesses. Maybe in tech, you don't, interview with that company CEO over and over and over. But in this business, you will. So it's just showing up for duty, calm, secure, confident, professional. And then that is the rapport building. And it's, it can feel not super satisfying because it takes time and a long vision, but that's what this game is. I've been doing this since I was a kid. I still think I can get my series. I'm positive.
Why not? This reminds me of something on one of my podcast interviews. Somebody was talking about slating for self-tapes. I generally haven't asked people to slate, and nobody seems to care or mind. She says she likes to do it, but she always likes it as a separate clip in case they try to do something like cute. And I said, does doing something cute ever work? And she said, no. Trying to be cute in a slate, it just always feels like you're trying too hard. Just don't even worry about that. Just don't do it. Don't do it.
I agree. What are the three, I'll just ask you this head on. What are the three top qualities in comedy actors you call in again and again?
Intelligence, humility, I'm sorry, there it is, and timing.
It's good answers. And I love that you keep going back to humility. I think it's important for everybody to understand that what humility really means. I mean, we can look up the textbook definition of the word, but in practice, I think some people go askew a little bit on it, right? Because it doesn't mean faux humility. It doesn't mean self-effacing or throwing yourself under the bus.
It doesn't mean that you don't have a great deal of confidence.
And that you're not willing to show, and that you won't show off your talent. Right? So anyway, I mean, it's just a simple point, but I just felt like, doing another lap on it, because you do need to be a star, but you need to be kind. And then you become a magnet to people to want to meet again or work with. All right. What generally is your standard for Slate on self-tapes? Obviously, each CD is looking for different things, but for you, kind of talk.
I tend to not do slates just because when I was an actor and I had to do the profiles and the full body, I don't know, it just felt creepy to me. But nobody ever seems to miss them. But one person told me she does it because that way she knows how to pronounce the actor's name. So that's useful, I guess. But I think you just want to be relaxed and pleasant.
Off of what you said, my experience, because it's through online now, but we were also in the before times. I had a room dedicated to self-taping because it's a service that actors need. And if you can do it on your own and you're all set up, that's great. But not everybody loves technology. Some people want company, etc. But just more and more, I grew to see the distinction being, and nobody asked my opinion. I know you're all here for Dorian, but I know some of you.
What is your opinion?
My observation is that it was more non-union projects seem to always want a slate, and SAG-AFTRA projects, less and less anyone was asking for it. There would be an occasional one that seemed very random for union projects. It was mostly just like, show me the work.
Yeah, that's what I feel, but I get it, yeah.
With new to you actor submissions, especially for co-stars or smaller guest stars, is it welcome to send second takes? That's a good question, Shira. I get asked that.
What was the last part of it?
Is it welcome to send you 2 takes of the scene?
Sure. I would say if you're sending 2 takes, make sure that there is a little bit of a difference between them. Make sure that they both work well. And I would send them in separate clips so that we don't have to edit something.
Good question. Great specific advice. Can I play devil's advocate on that question?
Yes, please.
because I don't know. There's never an exact right answer. Uh, I I tell people to at least consider the power of selling yourself and sending in the one that you feel greatest about. Is there any merit to that point of view?
Yes, absolutely. Most often when people send more than one take, they're kind of the same.
I learned that particularly, once Actors Comedy Studio had the self-tape place open and running. And so that's why I wanted to do a quick follow-up. I mean, we're each responsible for running our own business, and there isn't a universal guidebook that is the absolute yes or no answer to these questions. But I found when people asked me to do that, since they were paying for my time and service, I was absolutely happy to do it for them. But I would observe time and time and time again that they weren't different enough to be noticeable, and one was a slightly stronger version of the same thing. And then it does beg the question is, why do you want to send two different versions? Like, the writers, to me, is probably not writing a parallel version of the scene.
I think it's come up a couple times in this conversation. Part of what we're hiring is your interpretation, your ability to, figure out the best version of the scene as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, I do love that question, Shira, by the way, and appreciate it. But I feel like it's putting actors in the wrong lane when they think there's a thing to do that will make them happy or please them or get it right, rather than just going, I read this, and I watch enough other television that I get what this probably is, and then this is simply my version of that, and my understanding of it is probably right. I tell people this a lot, and it'll be interesting to see if you agree. I think television in particular can be amazing. There's so much of it at this point. So much of it, comedy and drama, fantasy, to me is great, and I love it. But I think it is very literal, in the sense that I think the script tells you what your character is. I think it tells you what they're like. The way they react to the circumstances will say, that guy's a neurotic. That person is an ice queen. So whether you have a more conceptual way of describing it or a very specific way of describing it, like that person is very strong, sturdy, strong spine, forthright. I think it's there in the writing, and then just do that version.
If it's decent writing, yeah. The only last thing I want to say on that is, when you come in and you say, well, I got these 3 different versions, I don't know, pick one, I feel like you're abdicating responsibility. So,
That's very powerful. All right, I'm glad we talked that through a little bit more. If you have any other questions, lovers, now would be the time to pop them in. Otherwise, I'll consider that Dorian and I were so remarkably thorough that I'm just gonna reach around here. I'm just being a jerk face. Okay, so it looks like we've covered what we needed to cover today. So then one last thing that I do in Chattable, because I thought through the formats where speed round was one part, then conversation. But I also thought, what could I give my guests? And on the list of things were Chattable mug, which maybe if we were in person, I'd love to hand you one, but we're doing this all virtually. So here's what it ended up being. So I have this box of Power Thought cards by Louise Hay, who we love. Just because they're positive, and I just thought it would be a good way to end. So in my mind, whether it's true or not, on one of these cards is what the universe wanted you to hear today. Okay, so I'm just gonna thumb through and then just say stop it at any point.
Stop.
Okay, so I'm convinced, I don't need you to be, I don't need them to be, but I'm convinced the universe wanted you to hear the following today. I'm going to show you too. It's very cool. The point of power is always in the present moment. The past is over and done and has no power over me. I can begin to be free in this moment. Today's thoughts create my future. I am in charge. I now take my own power back. I am safe and I am free. My God, I love this one, Louise. Hey, you care to respond to that in any way?
I feel a great sense of responsibility now to do something in the present moment with my power.
With all that power that Louise Hay just gave you. That was awesome.
That wash over me and brew. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it always seems to have a nice effect. I mean, it's all positive and power. So how can we go wrong? Well, okay, so that is the time we have for today. Just to let our viewers know, I did this as a series of 10. I don't know why it's been a lot. It's been great, but it's a lot of work. Why did I give myself so much work? It should be downtime. Anyway, my dear friend Kate Linder is joining us this Saturday at 3 p.m. Kate is amazing. She's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and she's had the same acting job for more than 40 years as Esther Valentine on Young and the Restless. How many people in the world can say, I've held on to my same acting job? She booked it with one line. I love when she tells the story. It was one line for not for a series regular, right? She was just going to be the maid that said something to Kay Chancellor and leave. And then 40 years later, she still got the job, and Young and the Restless is still on. So, right? It's pretty incredible. So that's what's coming up on Chattable. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. It was great to catch up with you. I hope to see you in person in the real times when it's safe and responsible to do so. We'll talk more about maybe putting together a class for online later. So that's also on deck because people have been asking, and some of the people here are also asking because we had one in person, but we're still adapting. So I owe you a phone call on that. But thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you. All right. So have a great week and a great week to you all. This is a wrap on Chattable with Dorian Frankel. Bye, lovers.